Okay, we are streaming. We got like 8 seconds to go. I just sit up and play with all this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, why not? There we go.
All right. We are live. Hello, and welcome to a show with no name. I'm Marlon Weems. I'm the publisher of the Journeyman newsletter on Substack, and occasionally I connect with my good friend Arturo Dominguez, who has also an excellent Substack that really tonight is going to, I would think, come into, well, it's apropos, I guess, given the last couple of weeks, the last few days. And Arturo, I'm just going to let you take it away, man.
Man, you know how it goes. There's never anything to talk about. But
well, I know it's going to be tough, but do your best.
Yeah, this I don't know. With the obvious thing is the war. With Iran.
Mm-hmm.
That's a new thing from last week that we didn't have to talk about last week, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's kind of been a disaster for us, for the U.S. It's been a blunder.
Mm-hmm.
You poke the hornet's nest and a bunch of hornets going to come flying out in all directions. And that's what happened. It's to a lot of us who have been watching the situation for years and, been paying attention. Iran's response is not a surprise. Attacking all the countries where there are U.S. military bases that are, these countries are allowing attacks on Iran. Of course, they're going to retaliate. Yeah, it's just been a disaster. We sunk that battleship that was nowhere near a war zone. It wasn't even armed. Yeah, I can't hear you. But yeah, it's been an overall disaster, from. Yeah, I can't hear you, bro. Your mic is off. It's muted. This tells your mic's muted. But yeah, there we go. No. Can't hear you. Yeah, I still can't hear you, bro. But yeah, ever since ever since we launched that attack on Iran, it's just been nonstop disaster. Obviously they didn't plan well. They left a lot of people stranded in the Middle East. They bombed a girls' school. I mean, I don't know where the atrocity ends. Like, they're carpet bombing Tehran, which is like, as densely populated as New York City with 3 times the population. It's just a chaotic situation right now, and it's hard to imagine, where it's going to go. So, obviously there's been some attacks on, I don't know, what did they say? Some oil pipelines, things like that. They accused Iran of doing. It turned out to be Israelis, I guess, and Western powers that are doing sabotaging stuff and trying to blame Iran. So yeah, the whole thing is a little. Still can't hear you, man. The whole thing is just out of control, and from there they're talking about going after Cuba and all these things, and that's one of those things that weighs on me because I have the Cuban family and stuff on the island, and they said something. There was some sort of press conference today at the White House with some sort of football or soccer team or something. And Donald Trump had said something about Cuba's next, but they wanted to finish up Iran first. And right now they're talking about that lasting until September. So I don't know if that's a sigh of relief for us or not, but it's still a really tense situation for Cubans on the island. It still shows. Yeah, no, still can't hear you. So yeah, one of the things that I've been covering, related to Cuba and stuff, has been like a lot of the motivation behind Cuban hardliners, the racism that exists there, where it comes from, the desegregation of Cuba and stuff. And, I've been getting a little bit of backlash from it. And I always do when I talk about the racism in the Cuban American community. But, at the end of the day, it's something we have to discuss, right? Like if we don't address it and try to atone for it and move forward and ensure we nip this in the bud, it's just going to get worse. And the way it's been going, for generations now, you have a lot of Cubans that fled the desegregation under Castro, came to the U.S. and essentially raised a bunch of, racist kids. So it's one of those things that just kind of grows exponentially. Racism and hate is taught. It's not something that we're born with. And that's where we see a lot of that in the Cuban community, the Cuban American community, I should say, because Cubans on the island aren't like this. It's mostly non-white island, black or mixed race Cubans. So, there's racism and discrimination in Cuba, but it's nothing like what it is here. So yeah, it's an interesting situation. When you look at the attack on Cuba about a week and a half ago, and you look at how all that played out and how these guys openly organized online, and essentially the feds kind of looked away as they tend to do in these situations. But you look at these motivations and trying to attack an island where most people have kind of been pushing back on the whole U.S. interventionism for nearly 70 years. It's hard to imagine that anyone would think, you there? Man, I still can't hear you. It's hard to imagine anyone could think that they could go to the island and nothing, bro. I don't know what's going on. But it's hard to imagine anybody thinks they can go to the island and foment an uprising and things like that. The last couple of times that happened in 2023 and 2024, it happened, twice. And, there was one where a guy rode a modified jet ski from the Florida Keys to Cuba, which is crazy. So don't ever try to do that. But yeah, he apparently showed up there. He had a bunch of guns and stuff. And, Cubans see that kind of activity, they call the cops. They're not interested in starting what these guys did with the boat last week. They wanted to go there, start fires, burn buildings down, try to cut the east side of the island from the west side of the island, deliver weapons and try to get people to start, some sort of an uprising. It's a ridiculous plan. For one, 10 guys are not going to be able to do that. I don't care how many weapons you think you have, you're going up against a military. So, no matter, supposedly these guys trained for months at a mansion in Florida, in Miami somewhere, or at a ranch or a farm. And, no matter how much training you do on some farm somewhere, you're not going to be prepared to take on, military personnel with, military weapons. And the outcome, what happened, 4 people losing their lives, it's a shame, but you can't open fire on military personnel and expect to survive. So it's kind of weird that you see something like that happen. It hasn't happened in a long time on that level. But, when it comes to Cuba, there's a lot of human smuggling going on, a lot of boats coming and going from Florida doing, illegal stuff. So I guess that sort of falls in line there where you think you're just going to sneak in there and do some things. But, when the situation is as tense as it is and the U.S. is trying to put pressure on the island, it's kind of hard to imagine that their security isn't beefed up around the border. Hard to imagine that you're going to get past that. Additionally, I think it's weird that a lot of, you have the Navy and the Coast Guard and all that stuff out there, right? And they obviously can track fishing boats because they're blowing them up. But somehow they let this one get through. That's a little curious fact that a lot of people aren't discussing. And I know it seems a little, conspiracy theory type situation, but given the CIA's history of looking away, it wouldn't surprise me that they did let that boat get through. It's just weird to me that you look at Miami now and there's people there that are trying to portray these guys as heroes. And, when you look at everything they did, the training, the buying the weapons, the propaganda, the recruiting online, it all reeks of terrorism, right? If it was If these were Arab guys, we'd be calling it terrorism. If these were neo-Nazis, we'd be calling it terrorism. So to try to look at these Cubans in a different light and try to say that, yeah, these guys are heroes because they were trying to liberate an island, that's just a false narrative. I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? Because all these things they did are illegal for a reason. They transported weapons across international boundaries. Those are huge crimes. Training, buying these, all these, planning these, even plotting attacks on U.S. soil is a crime, federal crime. So it's really hard to imagine that anybody can justify this, but, in Florida, in that bubble, they are, they're justifying it. And it's kind of scary because, 4 people died, 6 other people got shot. Now those 6 people are being brought up on terrorism charges in Cuba, and rightfully so, right? I mean, you go to a sovereign nation with machine guns and Molotov cocktails and drones and, explosives, and yeah, that's terrorism. So, and, they're Cuban nationals. So you can't say, give us our people back, because they're Cuban nationals. So they can be tried under Cuban law without any issue. So yeah, it's interesting to see how this is all playing out. I'm not surprised it's not being talked about more, considering what happened with Iran. But you there, man? No, nothing. Marlon just popping in, popping out. Oh man. So yeah, it's just, I'm not surprised it's not being discussed more because of Iran. I really do think it should be, because you have to ensure that you don't let it happen again. There's obvious reasons why these things are illegal. It creates international.
I'm going to try it again.
There you go. I hear you. I hear you.
Had to go low tech, man.
There you go. All right. All right.
I'm sorry, folks. I'm just over here. You got a 1958 boomer trying to mess around with, state-of-the-art technology, I guess. I could not figure out what was going on. So anyway, you keep talking, man. I know.
Yeah. I was just kind of doing the rundown on the situation with Cuba and the boat thing. And, I was just saying how, we need to try to focus on it a little more and make sure it doesn't happen again. 4 people died needlessly, thinking they can do some Rambo stuff. And, it's a shame because.
Yeah, what, over 1,000 dead?
In Iran? Yeah.
I would assume so, yeah.
Iran is the situation there's, it's out of control. It's out of control.
Man, I am here to tell you, it is going to be when these guys, we're not, put it this way. I told somebody this morning, we're not going to be the ones to decide when this war is over.
No, yeah.
It's not like, you got guys like Pete Hegseth out there, and, they're talking about, 4 or 5 weeks or 4 or 5 months. I don't know which, but
they're talking September now. Yeah.
That's Pentagon this morning.
Yeah, I saw it a couple hours ago. They said that Pentagon officials were looking at, going till at least September. So,
the interesting part is they're going to be coming back asking for money in a minute.
Oh, for sure. For sure. We're running low. We're depleting all our stockpiles, all over the world. It's moving weapons, into the area because I don't know. It's like I was saying before we lost you, was like a lot of us who've been monitoring the situation and kind of know a little bit fully expected this kind of a response from Iran.
Listen,
I don't know what are they thinking in the White House?
I don't know. Well, first of all, when you've got an inner circle that's dumber than you, and Trump is dumb, but these guys, you cannot go from being a Fox weekend host to running the Pentagon.
Right.
And so now I never served, but I have just a general feeling that, generals, they wanna do that shit. Yeah, this is what they live, this is what they prepare for. And I'm not belittling it or anything. I'm just saying that what's the saying, when you got a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and so somewhere along the way, these guys have forgotten why Iran does not like us, or why going back to most of the, all the way back to what, the late 50s, when we overthrew their democratically elected person. And then we
Yeah.
followed that up with the Shah. I was talking to Egberto yesterday when I was in college. So we're talking about the mid 70s. I had many Persian friends. There were a lot of Persians. There were a lot of Africans, particularly Ethiopians. And so I got to know some of these guys, and I had no idea of the politics coming out of high school. But these guys were to be in the United States, they were from relatively prestigious families. And they were protesting wearing like pillowcases over their heads for fear that they'd be identified and
Really?
disappeared. Yeah. That was in like 77, around that time. And I don't know, man. It's like we think we're the only country that's got culture of some sort. It's just weird.
Right.
But they've been planning for 50 years for this.
Yeah.
It's not like we caught them asleep,
Right. And all these threats and bombings and supposedly we blew up their nuclear program and set them 20 years back, like 2 months ago. And now they're telling us Iran is 2 weeks. Yeah. And now all of a sudden we're back to 2 weeks, and you ever see that movie Money Pit, where the contractors keep telling Tom Hanks and 2 weeks. Yeah, that's what we've been living since around about the same time.
Man, that's no bullshit.
Yeah, man, ain't no bullshit.
Everything. It's just like on a trading desk, guys used to say, yeah, it's going to be like next week, like you're getting an upgrade on the system. It's never that. Right. I saw a friend of mine sent me something off into Instagram, because now, of course, I guess us included, everybody's an expert. But somebody was making the case that it was whoever runs out of missiles first. And, they were calculating how many missiles we got versus Iran, and so on. And I'm going, no, this is not that kind of war. We're fighting Cold War, and these guys are asymmetrical. They got all these drones that are from what I understand, man, they make some of the best drones. Put it this way, China makes every damn thing, and they're buying drones from Iran.
Right.
Which they're then sending to Putin, and he's using them in Ukraine.
Yeah, and here, what's funny is I just read an article yesterday or the day before about how the U.S. is reverse engineering those drones, and now we're employing those same drones because of how effective they are.
Oh, yeah. So when I hear people say, well, we're going to escort ships through the Persian Gulf, that reminds me of the early 80s, when I really had just gotten in the business and I was a bond salesman. Bonds are very sensitive to this kind of thing. I mean, the whole, stock market is too, but it's really bonds. Whenever there's conflict, they react. I mean, you look right after, I think it was the day after this happened, the stock market was up.
Yeah.
All these defense contractors and, and the indexes, Anthropic, and which I don't know how that's going to go, but, all the AI companies that are still, even Anthropic, as we speak, the military is using their stuff. Right. And at the same time telling us they're a supply chain risk.
Right.
So these guys are just playing. They don't know what they're doing.
No, I mean, part of it is they don't know, just outright incompetence, right? I mean, they're exposing so much about our foreign policy with this incompetence. But the other part of it is just kind of trolling, right? They want the clicks. They say outlandish things. They do outlandish things. Like, for example, blowing up that Iranian battleship that was unarmed and killing over 100.
How many people were on that ship?
180. and I think I don't know. There's 100 and something missing still, and
Wow.
some certain amount of bodies have been recovered on the Indian coast. Yeah, it was just, and you know, all they care about is posting the video.
I know,
And
man. It's like they can't wait to get to social media.
right,
It's
right. That's all it's about for this administration. Like their popularity's in the toilet, and they don't care because they're getting clicks, so they think they're popular. What I guess they don't realize is what we know is that, especially on Twitter, something like 75% of all the activity is bot activity. So all the retweets they're getting, chances are 3 out of 4 are useless. They're not real people.
not really going to anybody. Well, you know,
Right.
man, I always show up with charts. I got some charts for you.
Okay.
So it was, you know, I wrote a piece, I guess it was maybe last weekend, and it was talking about how I think Trump, either by accident or this is part of maybe a big strategy, you know, tariffs are killing the dollar, and they're making people go to alternative currencies. And I just, you know, did a little bit of research, and you look at all of these different incursions that he started, and that little squiggly line going up is the dollar. So every time he does something, you see, it affects the dollar. But, you know, this is not a long-term strategy.
Right.
And I don't know if this is something that is, you know, sort of the unintended consequence. But one thing I know about Trump, the guy watches markets.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
He may not understand them, but he watches them. And I would be willing to bet that this is something that's not lost on him. But here's the other part, though. Okay, this was in Bloomberg, I think, this morning. And I mean, that's just the last few days. And look at those. Those are basically what we're looking at is, you know, vessel tracking data of what's coming through the Strait of Hormuz, right?
Wow.
It's like virtually nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And I got one last one. This was in the Financial Times. And this, you know, if you look to the left, 2011, we're going back to Obama days. So that's when, and then you got you see the 2 lines with nothing in, that is the JCPOA, the deal that Obama struck that basically shut these guys down as far as, you know, nuclear activity. And then on the other side of that line to the right, that's Trump. Think about it. So everything that's happening right now essentially is the legacy of his first term. We don't have all these centrifuges. If the guy just would have come in and done nothing,
yeah,
we'd have been better off.
Yeah.
If he just came in and just, you know, kind of was a placeholder.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, his first term, he pulled us out of the Paris climate agreements and JCPOA. Now he comes back, and think about it. If he just came in, and I'm talking about just the economy, and just kind of left stuff alone. If he hadn't done tariffs, I mean, it'd be a whole different situation we'd be looking at right now. And the rest of the stuff, it is hard for me to believe that they did not see, you know, what the reaction was going to be. And I just feel like Netanyahu, man. Now, you know, if you really want to get down, okay, I bet they've been lighting that Trump meme coin up, you know, because that's money we never can see.
Right.
And I just really believe money coming out of the Middle East, probably coming from Israel, going into his, and you know, what's Melania need a meme coin for? Can you just tell me? Well, I don't know, man. He's speaking in front of the United Nations now, so maybe there's something I don't know.
Dude, that was ridiculous. That was the dumbest thing. Like, what
You're being
qualified her? Yeah, like I don't even get that. And it just highlights to the world how unserious this country is right now. Hegseth and Kristi Noem just got fired because just of how unserious she is. Not
She
that,
didn't even know she had gotten fired.
huh?
I
Yeah,
heard she was in the middle of a speech somewhere.
yeah.
She didn't even know she was getting fired.
Right, apparently not, but she was canned, and they're putting Mark Wayne Mullen in there, which isn't much better. But she's also, where does it go? Let's see, they're gonna place her in a different position, basically overseeing like Latin America, and they're calling it
I
something
heard
like
she's a special envoy to something
right.
that I never
Yeah,
heard of before. So
no,
I don't know, man. Well, and you know what that's about. This woman knows she's seen a whole lot. She they can't let her outside the circle. They
yeah,
can't let this woman, they can't let her go write a book.
right,
I mean,
right,
you see anybody that they shot a dog in their book, she'll tell everything.
yeah.
She'll tell it all.
Yeah, and the thing they're moving. She's going to be special envoy to the Shield of the Americas. I
What
think is
is
what it's
that?
called.
Yeah,
Shield.
it was a
Yeah, it
shield.
has.
I remember that much.
Yeah, it has to do, with cartels and drug trafficking and blah blah blah.
Sounds a whole
It's a
lot
made up
like
thing.
a no-show job.
Yeah, I think
In New York.
she's like a support role for Rubio, is what it sounds like to me. But yeah, that scares me because she's a dangerous one. Mark Wayne Mullen is just as dangerous as she is because of how ignorant he's as ignorant as she is. The other day they asked
Mullen
him.
is really just a very ignorant person.
He is like,
I mean,
they asked,
I'm not saying it like, no, he doesn't seem to know a lot.
he doesn't. And
I
that's the
mean,
thing. They asked him the other day if he thought Delcy Rodriguez was the legitimate president of Venezuela. He starts calling Maduro illegitimate president, but then he goes on to say he doesn't understand how Venezuelan elections work. I'm like, so how are you making any of these assessments? You can't make a decent assessment without knowing how things work, and that's what scares me about a guy like Mullen at DHS. And that's what scares me about a person like Kristi Noem, overseeing Latin America and stuff. Like, this is just all colonialist, imperialist nonsense, man. It's crazy.
what's one thing that we have learned in the last 10 years, if we didn't already know it? Money does not equate to intelligence.
Yeah.
It doesn't equate to talent. Now, when I was working in New York, when I went to New York, and you got to think about it, I came from Little Rock, Arkansas, and I'm going to New York. It wasn't quite the Beverly Hillbillies, but the first time I went to New York, it just really knocks you out because it's just beyond. When I got hired to work in New York, again, I had a perception that I was going to walk into this situation where people just were, they just were on top of the game. It's the best of the best. Nope. Some of the most ignorant people I met were people that I worked with, and they just didn't know a lot about anything outside of their particular, focus, whatever it might have been. But so I guess I've just kind of over the years disabused myself of being in awe of people that have a lot of money. It's almost an accident of birth most of the time.
Yeah. Most of the people I've ever met, even growing up as a kid and stuff, anybody who had money was never like a decent person. You know what I mean? They were crappy people, and money does that to people, right? Obviously, you start getting money, you start getting a lot of privilege that comes with it, and you try to exert that, I guess. But I mean, most of the people that I know of that are well off are either seriously addicted to drugs or they have some sort of disorder. Like, I mean, there's like
Well,
And
when you can,
there's most of them are just
when
assholes.
when the money part's not a problem,
Right.
it's I mean, that's a whole different conversation. Just how we over the years, we as just a culture have deified, people that happen to be billionaires. And
Yeah.
I feel like really, at least the way I noticed it, it really started in finance, with going back. I'm talking
can see
about going back to, say, the late 90s, early 2000s, where you'd have like CNBC, and they just sort of made celebrities out of guys like Jack Welch, who was the
Yeah.
CEO of GE, and all these other folks. And it kind of created this idea that we think, that we just basically made superheroes out of anybody that figured out how to make $1 billion or be the CEO of a company. Right. And you can pretty much, there's a through line with all of that to inequality. And, my wife is standing back over here. She can hear this, but so I got to give you the sanitized version. But so this is going back. This is going back to when we were in New York, and I was. It was during the financial crisis, and there's a guy named John Peterson. He's a big Trump supporter now. This guy, you hear The Big Short, the guys that figured out the housing market was going to collapse, and they made a movie out of it. Michael Lewis wrote a book about this. These guys, just some random dudes out on the West Coast, figured out that they saw it coming. But this John Peterson guy had a hedge fund. I guess he still does. And so he was connected enough that he could go to Goldman or one of the big firms and pitch his idea, which was to bet against the housing market. And they basically created securities that would allow him to benefit. This guy, and this, again, we're talking about during the financial crisis. So while folks we know were losing everything, this guy made like $1 billion 1 year. Personally, he made just from having the connection to be able to set up this trade that benefited if the housing market collapsed. Long shot bet. And it's just like anything. Like if you go to the horse races and bet on the long shot, you're going to make, if it comes in, you make a bunch of money. Yeah. So I'm sitting up actually at this same table, but in my kitchen in New York, and I'm reading about this guy, and I'm fanboy. I'm going, dang, this dude's something here. And my wife says, don't you think that's too much money for one guy to make? I got mad, dude. I'm like, what are you talking about? He didn't break the law, and
right.
She's like, yeah, but think about it. I mean, $1 billion, really? It took a minute for it to simmer. Actually, it took a few years. but when you leave that environment and sort of, now I'm in the real world.
Yeah.
Where people do not make $1 billion in a year just from some esoteric shit. It's really gross when you think about it, right? Yeah. Just the hoarding of resources, and think of how many people had to lose everything they own for that guy to make $1 billion freaking dollars.
Yeah, you can't become a billionaire without exploiting something or someone, and it's usually a lot of someone's. I'm
gonna put a caveat on that. Okay, because I've known a few billionaires, and oddly, I'm not a billionaire, but I worked for some guys in Little Rock, and they, on paper, were billionaires. And the way they became billionaires was by, finding companies that they thought were going to turn into something. Mm-hmm. One of those companies was Walmart. They took Walmart public when it was like Dollar General or something.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know that a lot of people were harmed in the way we think of like Jeff Bezos, where people can't even go to the bathroom and he's over here making a rocket. So I guess I just don't believe in absolutes. I'm not even saying there should be billionaires, but I feel like nowadays it's all about stock options and all these, like, Elon Musk possibly could make $1 trillion, that kind of stuff. These guys were old school. They weren't doing that. It was, now, were they cheating? Oh, dude, they would put money in a briefcase and put the briefcase in the trunk of a car and tell whoever the guy was that had to approve a bond deal, here are your keys, your car's sitting right outside, but that's the old school way of cheating. Yeah, it's sketchy, but it's not on the scale of what we see now, to me.
Yeah,
Now, you might disagree.
Right. Well, I mean, when it comes to the Walton family, there's a scam there. And one of those is, we subsidize subsidize them, because they pay people shitty wages.
They basically tell people to go get on food stamps, get on welfare.
Right. So here's the thing: their employees go get on food stamps, then they give their employees a discount so they can shop at Walmart. So now they're paying their employees crap, and they're profiting off the food stamps that they force their employees on. Meanwhile, that's our taxpayer dollars.
Yep.
Somebody mentioned how, Walmart drove a lot of small businesses out of business.
Oh, you don't have to tell me, dude.
It was the destruction of Main Street.
For the longest time. I don't know if there's a Walmart in and around Manhattan. But they were trying to get into that market for the longest.
Right.
And, I've seen that. And even where I am right now, it's not really Walmart, but I'm on an island, but the mainland part of the town is it's really, well, all of it's really growing because a lot of people during COVID have just gotten, they left the big cities and this is kind of where they would land. You look at, for the longest time, and they still have held on to this on the island in terms of not allowing any franchises to set up shop. No big hotels, nothing like that.
Right.
And, the private equity guys got around it by, well, shit, okay, we can't open a hotel. We'll just buy the whole neighborhood,
right.
And rent houses, and rent everything out. So, or another thing they do is they build these gigantic houses that look like, essentially they're hotels, but they're houses. They're just really, really big houses that, 20 people can stay in there. So there are ways around it. But now Starbucks opened on the mainland the other day. So sooner or later, they're going to probably fall, just like every other community. We had a Walmart, but it's one of the old school Walmarts, not the big, where they sell everything from a loaf of bread to a car, no Sam's Club. And so it's really kind of kept just sort of the feel of the community, as being like a old school touristy kind of place. But it's hard, man.
Yeah.
When I had my little medical issue back in December, to get to the emergency room, man, I had to drive 30 miles.
Wow.
That's the closest, right? The closest actual hospital is a little further than that. So, that's what happens though. Technically I'm living in a rural area.
Right.
Even though it's one of the nicer rural areas, but that's what it's classified.
Yeah. For me, like in Houston, like to compare to like a rural area, like East Texas, where my wife's family lives, we're like maybe a mile or two from the nearest like minor emergency place, and maybe three miles from an emergency room. You go up to East Texas, like Longview, Texas, and you could be anywhere from 10 to, like you said, 40 miles from the nearest hospital. And you go to East Texas too, you see nonstop food deserts, right, where people have to drive 30 and 40 miles just to go to a Walmart. So what replaces, what you put dollar stores in those food deserts, and people are paying $6 for a gallon of milk because it's convenient. So there's this, I don't know, the way this society operates, everything is about greed. And I talk about this sometimes, how, for example, like the Cuban pharmaceutical industry, right?
Okay.
If you were to give Cuba access to free markets in the United States, it would transform how it would require the pharmaceutical industry in the US to transform, because Cuba creates vaccines and medicines and then gives them away. And if another country needs help manufacturing vaccines, Cuba goes over there and gets them started and then walks away, and they don't ask for anything. If you brought that kind of what would you buy from Pfizer that you could get from Cuba for free? You see what I'm saying? So it
Well, I
would
think you're answering your own question.
right, so that would
That shit
reach
happen.
right. And you look at Cuba, like industry after industry would do that to the United States, including its power grid, which is state run. People pay for maintenance and operating costs, and that's it.
Mhm.
That's their electric bill. No profit person in the
So
middle.
what
No,
is it, more like a co-op kind of a
yeah,
thing, or?
yeah. The entire grid is a co-op in Cuba.
Mm.
The whole thing, and
Interestingly, that's the way the island, the company that runs the electricity on the island and the surrounding areas, it's a
right.
co-op.
Yeah, you go to these rural places in East Texas, their power grids are co-op, their phone systems are co-ops. And here's the crazy thing. When we had the big freeze that killed so many people throughout Texas, in
Oh, a
East
couple of
Texas,
years ago?
yeah, in East Texas, where they have all those co-ops, they didn't lose power because they're connected to Louisiana. We aren't. So the co-ops are tied to the national grid, and the rest of Texas isn't. And it's only up and down the eastern part of Texas, from Clan Country and Vider all the way up to Marshall, right across from
Okay,
Shreveport,
wait a minute.
Louisiana.
I'm sorry. Can we back up? What you
Yeah,
said, clan
Clan
country,
Country. Yeah. Oh man, East Texas is Clan Country like crazy. I mean,
East Texas. So
yeah.
that would be what
Fuck.
town?
Anywhere from like Beaumont all the way up to like Marshall,
Okay.
Texas. Yeah, like
Oh,
Orange,
I've been to Marshall, Texas, long time ago.
Orange. Yeah, yeah.
I didn't
Jasper.
realize that.
Yeah, Jasper, Texas is really, it's one of those. Jasper, Texas, in any black person from Louisiana or Texas knows, you just drive through Jasper, Texas at night. Stay on
Do
the
not
highway.
stop, huh?
Don't get off. Don't get gas. Most people, like, I don't even stop in Jasper. I just
Mm,
keep going because that's that town, and
that
it's right
sounds
on
like
I
Harrison,
10.
Arkansas.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's right on I-10 too.
Mm,
So, it's a trap. Like most anybody who knows anything about Jasper avoids it if you're not white.
that's
And
crazy.
it's a scary thing because there's towns like that all over the place here.
That's
But yeah,
nuts.
they Clan Country, all their stuff is on a co-op. And like I said, they didn't lose electricity when the big freeze hit because they're smart enough to be tied to the national grid where the rest of us
Figured.
aren't.
So, okay, you raised Cuba,
Yeah, I had
you
to.
raised Texas. Let's just stop and just take a pause on Cuba. What is the latest? Are we simultaneously like fighting a war and still trying to starve Cuba?
Yeah, yeah, short answer, yeah. The other day, about a week ago, a few days ago, the United States said that they would allow the resale of Venezuelan oil to Cuba. Only to Cuban private industries, right? They have a lot of private businesses in Cuba. It's like the private businesses in Cuba account for, I think, 51% of all retail sales now, compared to they're finally outpacing the government.
Hmm.
The problem with it was they put restrictions on there saying that none of these businesses can use Cuban banks. They all run on Cuban banks. So how are they supposed to buy oil, Venezuelan oil, through?
That's one of those things that sounds, that's the kind of shit the United States does.
Right.
They
They
do
try.
things that we do things that on the surface sounds like we're being all benevolent and
Right.
helpful and shit. And then when you dig down into the fine print, you find something like that.
Yeah, and it says, for example, a lot of the sanctions say that, it doesn't apply to food or medicine. The problem with that is when it comes to like compounds to make medicines, right? The raw materials or whatever, the United States classifies those as, chemical agents, not pharmaceuticals. So they're not on the list. So you can't buy pharmaceuticals. And then there's like the restrictions that Trump put in place in 2017 that, previously sanctions prevented Cuba from buying anything with more than 25% U.S. parts in it, which still left them open to buy a lot of things like medical equipment, things like that. But in 2017, Trump and his maximum pressure sanctions reduced that to any products with more than 10% parts in it. That took X-ray machines out. That took, the ultrasound machines, all kinds of different equipment that they couldn't buy. Stuff for the power grid they couldn't buy to upgrade the power grid. There's a lot of things, almost everything vital that Cuba needs, including parts for its garbage trucks and buses, are on that list that can't be bought. So in that time, Cuba's healthcare sector is starting to, cripple because they're limited in what they can do, and they can only manufacture so many pharmaceuticals, on their own. And so far, Cuba over the last 67 years has done a great job of manufacturing their own medicines. And I mean, they even have a therapeutic care. It's technically a vaccine, but it's done through like therapeutic care for lung cancer. And they did that under sanctions. They created their own COVID vaccine because even Biden wouldn't lift any sanctions to give Cuba or Venezuela any relief. So they developed their own vaccine. And what did they do? They gave it away. They gave it to China. China mass produced it. And then they started giving it away to the whole world for free. And that is something our pharmaceutical industry didn't like, because all of a sudden the vaccines they were charging 300% more than they were charging us for in Africa and in Latin America suddenly weren't worth anything because they were getting the Abdala vaccine from Cuba for free. So there's all these things. And to answer the question again, yes, we're still trying to starve my friends and family over there. And I'm having a hard time coming to grips with that, because yesterday, blackouts are now 20 hours at a time. And we're talking island wide.
Like the entire day, basically.
Yeah, right. The solar generation, which makes up 38% of Cuba's power grid now, it can't even keep up because it's getting hotter. And that requires more energy. And, people are putting up solar panels everywhere in residential houses and everything like that. So, people are trying to get by as best they can. But things are starting to get tight, without aid from other countries, it's really starting to get bad. And it's kind of shameful when you see countries like Canada, and even European countries like Spain and stuff, they contribute $8 million for aid to Cuba. The US contributed $6 million. And, it's going to take every country in the world to put in handfuls of millions of dollars to try to make any difference in what the United States is doing. And one of the things that bothers me, and it's one I was saying this when you were having issues, is, and I get that we're not talking about Cuba right now because of the Iran thing, but that's detrimental, because if Cuba's next and we're not paying attention, it's going to catch us off guard. So one of the reasons I keep writing about Cuba is to try to keep it in the forefront. And one of my recent articles that I wrote, digging into the racism between the Cuban American hardliners stance, has been going viral. And, I look at my Google Analytics at the live map, and the live map is lit up, and it's that article. And I've been seeing it a lot of traction in Miami, and I'm also getting a lot of pushback. I'm catching a lot of heat, and I refuse to shut up about it, because if this is really what's getting their goat, I'm going to get their goat. I'm going in, because the more people's eyes I can get on the situation to understand what is happening in Cuba. The article I wrote today is supposed to be used as a tool for anybody who anything you see on social media that people are like, oh, Cuba does this and Cuba does that. This article provides you all the details to push back on that. When they say that a lot of Cuban Americans will tell you that the economic embargo doesn't exist, the blockade is just propaganda the Cuban government came up with. That article debunks that. When they say that Cuba can trade with any country in the world, I debunk that too. When they say medicine and food are exempt from sanctions, I debunk that too. Just like all the stuff we're talking about now is in that article. And the point of that article is you can take it, paste it in the comment section, be like, bullshit, that's not true. And that's the point of that. That's the point of that. Because there's just so much misinformation and people are using that to rationalize starving 10 million people. And nothing they say justifies starving 10 million people. Nothing. I don't give a fuck if Cuba's president was Adolf Hitler. It doesn't justify starving 10 million people. And that's just all there is to it, you know. I don't know what else to say. Like the Cuban people aren't interested in U.S. intervention. You know, they keep screaming "Yankee, go home." You know, they're just,
man,
they just don't.
One of the sad things that we've, I guess, all had to just accept about us is nothing's absolute, but I'm really talking about as it relates to politics. It's really sort of pull the mask off in terms of, I mean, there are some people who in America, just regular folks, and they're just really mean and heartless. And I'm having to have this conversation with one of my sons, my older two. And it's about Mamdani. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he's always, he lives in New York. So he's always sending me Instagrams of, just random, I get a message. It's an Instagram from just some guy that's saying, it's really misinformation, 99% of it.
Right.
And someone in the comments a minute ago made the comment, they've convinced us how to just totally turn on each other.
Yeah.
Because I actually went in on him. I said, dude, you sending me all this stuff about Mamdani, and a lot of it's just really not accurate. And it sounds to me like the reason you don't like him is because he's a Muslim.
Yeah.
And he took offense because, and it's very much the same way we see with, MAGA and far right. They do all these racist things, but you better not call them a racist.
Right.
Well, look, stop doing racist shit. It's real simple.
Yeah, I mean, these are the conversations we're supposed to have, right? Like, anytime if my mom says something that might be Islamophobic and she doesn't realize that, I'm like, Mom, you can't say that shit. That's Islamophobic. Like, don't say that. I might have to explain it. I'm that way with my kids. You know what I mean? Like, dude, like that. This is don't believe that. This is bullshit. Like, these guys are Islamophobic. Let me explain to you why.
I mean, the other day,
these are important.
You know what he forwarded to me? An Instagram from Libs of TikTok.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, dude, do you know who this is? And he was like, well, no, man, I just saw it and I just wanted to know, blah, blah. I'm like, come on, man. Look, let me help you.
Yeah.
This is the last somebody you should be listening to about anything. And I don't know who sent it to him, but that's the kind of thing. Jeffrey Mead. So my two oldest sons are both in their mid to late 30s. So neither one of them is married. They are the target market for Trump's bullshit, Joe Rogan's bullshit.
Yep.
What's the guy?
Nick
Peterson.
Fuentes.
Nick.
Yeah.
He hadn't
Jordan
gone that
Peterson.
far because I got news, dude. I'd be throwing hands.
Oh yeah.
If he came up with some Fuentes, that's it.
Yeah. No.
I'm sorry, we got to go old school. But no, seriously, because they have been convinced that these guys are free thinkers, and whenever I see that free thinker, and it's like, oh, you're free to think whatever you want, but that doesn't mean it's true. or
Or
real.
right. Yeah.
You know, we're not going to sit up here and debate gravity. You know,
Right.
it's like
Right.
that. It's down to that place where every little thing that is just sort of settled, oh no, you know, they got to take another look at it. And they have no expertise whatsoever in anything.
Right.
And so, you know, Joe Rogan seems cool, I guess, to a certain segment of society, typically unmarried dudes that maybe don't have a job. And so my son has work. He's, you know, I'm not saying he's totally gone over the edge, but I'm just saying I would hate to be his age right now and younger because there's so many traps for you to
Yeah.
fall into that we
Yeah.
just didn't have. You know, there's no social media. Basically, the only people I ran into that were lying all the time were just like guys I knew. You know, that
Right.
was sort of the end of it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't coming at me, you know, over the phone and all online and you know, I mean, for right. And so by the time the internet came along, I was a grown man. I
Right.
had, you know, a certain level of critical thinking. But on the other hand, even my older sons, this shit's been coming at them since high school,
Yeah.
you know? I mean,
Yeah.
it's really sad.
I didn't start using social media till I was 40 probably, you know. Um,
Yeah,
and
well, I'm
but
laughing, but I
you know what
guess
I mean?
right.
Like it's just it was weird, you know, and like we saw this grow. And for years I've been saying, you know, how we can't just keep ignoring these racists and these misogynists and all these guys who just keep talking down about women. And you know, we have what, two generations of people in this country who have been told, you know, oh, ignore that guy, ignore the neo-Nazi. He wants your attention. If you give him attention, you're giving him what he wants. Well, ignoring them is why this is so out of control. Ignoring these misogynists, the Andrew Tates and the Nick
Mhm.
Fuentes who wants to, you know, force himself on women. That's how we get here. You can't just keep ignoring them. You know, a lot of people are like, I'm leaving Substack because there's Nazis. Sorry, I'm not running from Nazis. I'm
Yeah,
leaving X
I
because of
mean,
Nazis. I'm not running from Nazis. And I get it. I'm not telling anybody else they need to stay on any social media platform
right.
because it does harm. It does real harm. Um, and for me, if it wasn't for my family, I don't know that I'd be able to cope with it either. I probably would have left X too. But the fact that I can laugh at a lot of things and my family laughs with me about a lot of things, especially when trolls come at me, is why I can do it. And unless you have something like that, I don't fault anybody for leaving
Mhm.
X. I'm honestly surprised that Dr. Allison Wilts is still there because
I don't know how she
she's
takes it,
getting hit.
especially as a woman.
She gets hit with the N word, with the
Oh, yeah.
misogynoir, with everything constantly. And I'm always over there, you know, on her stuff, trying to defend her. And, you know, she's one of our favorite people. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
So just on that subject, um, I saw this afternoon. It's in the Miami Herald, and they're talking about you know what I'm talking about? It,
yeah, I don't mean to laugh. I really
no,
don't.
dude, it's like these guys are so racist. It's just really they're equally ignorant though.
You
You
know
know,
what
so
kills me? You know what kills me
what's that?
is the main people that they name in those groups. You notice they have Latino names. They're Cuban Americans.
Yeah.
The
So what
same
we're talking
racism I
about,
was just
just for
talking about.
folks who haven't seen it, and you know, the article's paywall, so you know, I'll figure it out and maybe post it later. But the secretary of Miami-Dade County's Republican Party started a group chat primarily for conservative students. I'm trying to remember what school. It's
FIU,
yeah. So what's that?
FIU.
Florida International?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so. Yeah.
So they started a group chat, and I'm just reading it from the article. Within 3 weeks, it was filled with racist slurs. Someone wrote dozens of ways to violently kill Black people and the chat was renamed after one member described it as Nazi heaven. And this is even coming back on Turning Point, because I guess a lot of the folks that were in this group chat, and they're, N-word all over the place,
Man, I,
just
I
calling women all kinds of, sexist names, just, all the stuff you just think of what you would expect a racist to do. And that's what they're doing. And
it's
these are
straight.
all people straight out of the Republican Party that gets pissed off when we tell them they're a bunch of white supremacists.
Yeah, and the part that really, really set me off as a Cuban American is the fact that they're Cuban Americans. I searched every name, I looked them up, and before I said, of course, this is a bunch of Cuban Americans, and start sharing my article about why they're racist, I wanted to make sure they were. And yeah, the top 3 names in that chat, and they're all Cuban Americans, and it's straight Klan shit. I talk about a lot about how when Cubans came here, the Klan was trying to hide their racism behind anti-communism efforts. And that's where I think a lot of Cubans picked up this anti-communism, hide your racism stuff.
Okay.
This is a perfect example of that. I read those chats, and they are straight Klan shit. You don't see that, like, I mean, it's just so overt and
Yeah, I mean, I
disturbing.
this
I
in
was
the
so
article, and
pissed.
I was like, who are the people? And one person in the group chat said, man, if anybody ever gets a hold of this, we are cooked. And it's like, but you're writing it down, dude. And you're just
Yeah.
trusting that everybody is as racist as you. But clearly
Yeah, so
somebody said, oh boy, this is bad,
yeah,
and leaked it.
someone in the chat is asking, why is that? Is it proximity to whiteness? Sort of. Cuba was a very racist society before Castro, and the white supremacy was there. The island was segregated. Non-white Cubans were relegated to the fringes of society. Asian Cubans, Jewish Cubans. Believe it or not, yeah, there are Chino Latinos out there. And when Castro desegregated the island, the reason why everybody thinks Cubans are white was because all the white Cubans fled.
They're
and
the
came
ones
to the
that are
U.S.
in Florida,
and all
yeah.
the black and brown Cubans stayed because they were just granted freedoms. Of course, there was going to be that separation. I call it the white flight out of Cuba, because that's what it was. And yeah, it's sort of proximity to whiteness, but it's more generational racism that's taught. I said something about this earlier about how if we don't address this in our community, we're just going to keep raising more racists. And it just keeps growing exponentially. So that's why I talk about it. It's easier to me. It's easier to talk about it, atone for it, and move forward, and assure it never happens again, than it is to try to hide from it. But what are you hiding?
You know what, man? We have mastered the ability to sweep shit under the rug,
Yeah,
and that's
we have.
why just even as it relates to Iran, we have told a story, for 50 years that paints Iran as this belligerent. Look, I'm not saying that they're great or good, or
Right.
but we're throwing, we got a glass house over here. We're shooting folks in the head now on TV, or on video rather. And so, and I suspect every country does this to some degree, but America has really perfected the myth of, us as the shining city on the hill. And, look, there are way worse places to be where you can't even do what we're doing right now, or somebody's knocking on your door. So I'm not saying everything in America is bad, but boy, we're going through a rough patch right now. And a lot of these old, wounds are getting exposed.
Yeah. And a lot of these old wounds are being exposed, all thanks in large part to the incompetence in the White House.
Yep.
People can see the impact of an economic or an embargo on Cuba in real time. It's happening right now. You can see what happens when you cut them off from something and all of a sudden everything goes downhill.
Mhm.
And they already have over 1,000 sanctions on them, economic sanctions as it is. What do you think cutting their oil off is going to do? Of course it's going to cause suffering.
And you know what? That's as much as we have criticized social media, that's the other side of the coin,
Right.
is that it democratized information. The
A lot of it.
ability, it made it where anybody walking around with a phone, the world is basically in your pocket. It's just how you use it.
Yeah. We can track military movements before the Iran war started. We can track them now using, GPS satellites. We can see, military bases full of airplanes and where they're going to attack from. It does. There is a huge plus side to having access to all this information.
Yep. We saw it, during the the color revolution. We talked about this a few weeks ago. The Arab Spring, where they weren't able to quarantine information, and it was getting out.
Right.
And so it's just one of those things. I guess there's two sides to, you've heard, it's a double-edged sword. It really is.
Right.
But man, I just looked at the clock. We're just rolling around like we ain't got nothing else to do, or like our audience doesn't have nothing else to do.
I got ribs waiting for me, man.
Man, well, I don't have ribs, but I'm still hungry. So
yeah,
it's that time of day, folks. As always, we appreciate you for supporting us and coming on. Someone asked off topic, is Miss Weems making bread tonight? You know what? I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna have to talk to somebody, maybe the manager, because she hasn't made bread in about a week. So I don't know if I'm being punished for something or just what's going on. Or
we're gonna start a change.org petition.
Really? Get her back in the kitchen. Yeah, let's make that the title of it.
We're gonna get Marlon killed. She gonna kill you.
Marlon is not available tonight because unanticipated accident.
Yeah, right.
No, seriously. She I don't give her any grief about that, because it's like a science project to make a loaf of bread, man.
Yeah, my mom loves making bread, so
yeah, she's still kind of a newbie, but I tell you what, she's got that sourdough, she's got it down, man. So yeah. So anyway, we're gonna wrap up, but I'm gonna leave this with you. Mark Tuesday at 7 p.m. on your calendar. We have an announcement. I think it's going to be something that you guys have find interesting. Not gonna tease it any more than that, but something different that we've been working on for a while outside of this show. So we'll be sending out invites and all that good stuff, maybe over the weekend. And we're trying to take things up a notch, I guess, as you might say.
Yeah.
But, and anyway, we appreciate you. If you're able, certainly subscribe to both of our newsletters. If you look down at the bottom of your screen, you can see, how to find Arturo, how to find the Journeyman. And if you're able to support us, as you know, I mean, we're making our own bread, people. We just we don't have a lot of money. We're literally making our own bread. That's
funny.
So seriously, though, it all helps. And unlike some folks on Substack, they're not throwing resources at us. We're making bricks without straw.
There you go.
So, but I think the next step is going to be a good one. So
yeah, it is.
In the meantime, stay safe. Maybe stay off social media a little bit. Don't drive yourself crazy. I was talking to my daughter today, and she was just saying, man, I just feel like my brain is scrambled. And I said, you know what? Turn the TV off, put the phone down. The beach is a block away.
There you go.
Have a sit. And we have to do more of that, just to look out for ourselves. So anyway, I'll let you close it out, man.
Well, no, I just, appreciate the show today. I kind of needed it, man. I been going really hard. I took this week off from doing lives and stuff to try to take it easy, just, slow my roll a little bit, pace
You
myself
got
on
to
some
do it.
goals. But man, I really needed this, man. It's always something I look forward to is hanging out with you,
Well, thank
talk
you,
about
man. I
stuff, man.
appreciate that.
Yeah. So it's fun. I enjoy it. I needed this. So,
All
yeah.
right. Well, until next time, we will see you guys on the other side. If you're not following me, even if you're not a subscriber, if you're not following me on Notes, you're messing up, because
Yeah.
I give a lot of information, but also, try to sprinkle in some occasional comedy, let's say. So until next time, folks, we'll see
All right,
you.
guys.